Cooperation. So with that said, I would like to pass the microphone to Mr. Erick Tambo. He's the head of the Pan American Cooperation and Education Technologies, PACET, from the United Nations University, Vice Rectorate in Europe, UNU-ViE. So, Mr. Erick Tambo, you have the floor. Welcome.
Thank you very much. So I will be moderating the session today. So my name is Emmanuel Cheo, and I'm Associate Academic Officer at the United Nations University. We are hosted by the Vice Rectorate of Europe. And today, first of all, maybe I start by welcome all of you here today. And also a warm welcome to those who are joining us online, because I heard the session is being live streamed on a YouTube channel of the conference. So it's really a great honor to moderate this session on the topic appropriate framework for multi-stakeholder engagement to support youth and women, innovators and entrepreneurs in implementing climate solutions in Africa. So the session is organized within the framework of the Green Innovation Project funded by IDRC, the International Development Research Center Canada, and implemented by a consortium of partners which include the United Nations University, the Pan-African University in Algeria, AfriLabs, the Regional Collaboration Center of the UN Climate Secretariat in Kampala, and the Venture Capital for Africa, VC4A. So the aim of, or the main aim of the event today is to highlight the importance for engaging multi-stakeholders to promote green technology, innovation, entrepreneurship by implementing local climate action, and in so doing also contributing to transform local economy into low emission and climate resilient future. But another important objective of the session today is also to showcase examples of such a multi-stakeholder initiative, but also presenting challenges and opportunities for women and youth innovators and entrepreneur in climate action. So I would like to use this opportunity now to invite our panelists before I can go through the agenda for the session today. So what we have prepared, maybe I will just call the panelists to come on stage. Maybe Philippa, please come on stage. Dr. Mao Ami, Mr. William Otieno, please come on stage. And I'm also informed that one of our panelists is joining online, and also we are expecting one more panelist who she has excused herself because she's currently in another session that runs a little bit into our event. So when she will come, I will call her on stage to respond to some of the questions that will be posed to her. So I'm very happy to have this distinguished panelists, which I will introduce formally later. So this was just to welcome them on stage. So having said that, I will go straight to outline the agenda for today. We have already heard a welcome remark from Mr. Carlos Rui, Project Manager of the Global Innovation Hub, UNFCCC. And next is a keynote speech from Dr. Erick Tambo, who is the head of the Pan-African Cooperation and Education Technology Program of the United Nations University, which is hosted by the Vice Rectorate of Europe and located in Germany, Bonn, Germany. After his keynote speech or talk, we are going to have a discussion with the panelists, whereby we will have 2 rounds of questions, and they will share their perspective on the respective question. Now, after that, we will open the discussion to the audience to also ask questions or share their thoughts on the topic. And last but not the least, a closing remark which summarizes the discussion of the event. So I am very delighted to invite Erick, Dr. Erick Tambo, the head of the Pan-African Cooperation and Education Technology Program of the United Nations University, where I am also working there. Thank you, and Erick, the floor is yours.
Many thanks, Emmanuel, for this warm introduction and warm welcome. So it's really a pleasure to see you all here together. So all our distinguished panelists, but also all the people who are following us through the YouTube channel to talk about a very complex topic, how to create an appropriated framework to engage the different stakeholders of the ecosystem of innovation and entrepreneurship. So I will try to set the scene within the next 10 minutes, to allow more or less the discussion with all our experts on the podium. So maybe I will start with some key facts. I don't know how it will work. Maybe the regie, if you can, yes, go to the next slide. With some key facts about green innovation and entrepreneurship in Africa. So starting with the fact that green technology and sustainability represent a huge market. I think that is the assumption that we take for our discussions today. It's approximately 9.6 billion dollar in 2019, and it's projected to grow on 21% from 2019 to 2026. So what we also realize at the global level is that the investment in green technology and sustainability are increasing in developing countries. So Africa also amongst, so Africa as continent, where a lot of investment is also flowing in this regard. And one other key fact that we should observe and that we should build on, thank you, is the Africa Youth Demographic Dividend that we should build on. So it's 80% of the projected 4 billion increase in the global population by 2100 will be in Africa, with a working age population exceeding the one who doesn't work. So we have a very, very youth, in Africa, we have a youth population which will increase in the upcoming years, which represent what we call this youth dividends. But we also have to be very careful to domesticate and provide solution to this youth, because this dividend can easily turn into a nightmare. So if we take the case of unemployability. One other fact also that I want to bring to set the scene is the development of digital technology in the continent, with the mobile penetration and the innovative skills of youth and entrepreneurship, so which have contributed over the last, let's say, 2 decades to leapfrog several sectors in the continent. If we are taking the fintech sector, for example, for people in East Africa, but generally in Africa, so when you are talking about mobile money, so how far mobile money, the solution around mobile money are contributing to the GDPs of countries like Kenya, country like Ghana. So all these innovations are mostly led by youth, and they have also translate these innovations into other green sectors, if you are talking on the agri sectors. So how are they linking farmers with sellers using digital technology? So definitely the innovative spirit of this youth and the development of mobile technology contribute really something important that we have to consider on leapfrogging different sectors and contributing to climate action. So one thing that we also realize is that the ecosystem is quite fragmented. So in order to leapfrog these sectors, there's a need of interaction and collaboration with different stakeholders. And in this line, so there are several theoretical models that have really been used when we are talking on innovation and entrepreneurship. So I'm referring here to the Helix model of innovation, which is a framework which allows the interaction between different stakeholders in the knowledge economy, so to collaboration among different stakeholders. So the triple helix is more or less the oldest and the initial one, which bring together the public sectors, the universities, and the industry company together to support innovation and entrepreneurship. And this triple helix has been extended with a quadruple helix which integrate the civil society and the policy users. And finally, so a quintuple helix have been further developed which consider the natural environment and the environmental component. So that is the kind of theoretical framework. There's a lot of literatures around the triple helix of innovation, so which more or less provide already a theoretical framework to bring the different actors involved in innovation and entrepreneurship, not only in Africa but at the global level. It's a theoretical framework which can be applied everywhere. But I think what we also have to do is to contextualize the framework in our continent, in Africa. And what we did at the United Nations University at the PACET program, we developed our own framework. We adapted the quintuple helix framework with the main actor we see in the continents and involved in the innovation and entrepreneurship space. They are amongst other funding actors, and the regional and international development cooperation actors, government and policy institution, academia and research, technology and innovation hubs. So that are more or less, when we observe the scene in the continent, the main cluster of actors which have a huge and important role when you're talking about innovation and youth entrepreneurship. So, and there are existing model for the operationalizations of this Helix framework. And I want to mention here the Climate Innovation Center at the World Bank, which are, let's say, which is a kind of cycle chain which bring together all these stakeholders providing different services, from technology need assessment, from facilitating coordination and research and development demonstration program, from market analysis barrier, facilitated deployment of policies and program, standard development and certification, so business services, support for the creation of enterprises, providing finance and facilitate access to finance, develop regulatory framework, providing capacity building, training and mentoring. And so these different services are the palette of, let's say, activities that the different stakeholders, or the palette of role and activities that the different stakeholders of the Helix are taking. So, and there are already at least 4 or 5 climate innovation centers implemented. The one in Ghana, the one in Kenya, the one I think in Tunisia, and another one I think in Asia. So that are concrete example on how different actors of the Helix mentioned there are already operating and creating impact. So transforming, if you are looking on the statistic of the Climate Innovation Center in Kenya or in Ghana, you can see the numbers, the funds that they have already been able to mobilize and the number of startups that they were able to support. So what we did also with our project, as already mentioned by the moderators, so the presentation takes place in the frame of the project where we brought all these different stakeholders together that have been mentioned in the Helix before, and to walk around this framework that we call the Green Innovation and Entrepreneurship Framework in Africa, where you can see in the bottom, so the Green Innovation Policy and Knowledge Hub to analyze the interaction around the different stakeholders. In the middle, so you have the Pan-African Virtual Incubator, which is the space where the different services for innovator, youth and women, so being mentoring, being training, being seed funding, are organized and provide. So when we are talking on green sectors here, we are talking on 5 major green sectors, namely renewable energy, water management, smart agriculture, waste management, and climate action. And after the incubation, also the ideation of the ideas and the maturation of the idea by the youth, we also have on top the Pan-African Green Accelerators, which is more or less responsible to take the different initiatives further and upscale them. So what you see here is the theoretical framework that I've presented, the quadruple helix transformed into framework, and the different actors mentioned here. So we have at the Green Knowledge and Policy Hubs, institutions like the SSC Kampala will play a role because they are more or less the link, the bridge to the policy makers. So in the middle, when we are talking about the green incubators, AfriLabs is the umbrella association of technology and innovation hubs in the continent, providing different services for the ideation and incubation and maturation of ideas, is represented in the middle. The academia and research here is represented by partners of the consortium, namely the United Nations Universities and the Pan-African University, the Institute for Water and Energy Sciences. And the upscale and acceleration of solution is covered by the partner VC4A, Venture Capital for Africa. And we also have the international actors of development cooperation, the IDRC, which is here funding our project and directly supporting innovation and the deployment of innovation and innovative ideas and solutions in the continent. So that is more or less the translation of this theoretical framework in an operational framework into a project with different stakeholders. And what can we expect from the project that we are currently implementing? So already mentioned, we will set up a green entrepreneurship knowledge and policy hub. So where a question related to market analysis, barriers, startup analysis in selected green sectors that have been mentioned will be conducted. So in-depth gender analysis of the ecosystem of green innovation and entrepreneurship. There are a lot of scientific article, policy brief, which will be produced in the frame of this project. So also analysis and of recommendation between analysis and recommendation to improve the interaction between the different stakeholders will also be done at the Knowledge and Policy Hub. What we will also do to support the ecosystem, particularly the Technology and Innovation Hub, we will develop 20 online courses, so to provide what we call hard skills. Taking, for example, if we take, for example, the climate actions as one of the sectors that we will address. So what we call hard skills here is we will develop a course on carbon emission trading market to allow the innovators, the African innovators in the sector, to understand the mechanism before and design business case around the carbon emission. So that is what we call hard skills. If we are talking on renewable energy, we think that an innovator should be able to understand how a smart grid functions before thinking on innovation. It's helped to develop what we call knowledge-based innovations that could be patented, replicated, and upscale at the bigger stage. So what we will also do in the frame of the project, so we will collect all entrepreneurial materials, all existing materials at the African level around entrepreneurship and also soft skills that will be in our learning environment. What we will also do will be to develop a blueprint for the design of virtual incubator and virtual accelerators. So we are trying to organize all the technology and innovation hub according to sectors. And if one of them want to go online with his services, he can use the blueprint that we will design in the frame of this project to design virtual incubation and acceleration processes. So, and at the end, as already mentioned, we try to set up a community of practice to organize the tech-up, the innovators, the business actors into online community of practice so that they can interact and have more in-depth discussion. So that is more or less some of the, let's say, expected output of the project that welcome you to follow. So on the homepage, greennovationsafrica.org, and yeah, and to register to join the alliances, because we are building on an alliances of different stakeholders, just to scan the QR code and join the alliances. So I hope with this word to have more or less set the scene, the theoretical, let's say the scene with a theoretical and implementing model on how can we bring different stakeholders and different actors to work together to support youth and women innovators in the green sectors. So thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Eric, for that very rich presentation. To summarize what I took from the presentation as key statement, it's that a lot of investment is flowing in Africa, in the innovation sector. Africa is having a very youthful population. The ecosystem of innovation is still very fragmented in Africa. So with that statement, I would now like to formally invite our distinguished panelists, where I will start by inviting Ms. Philippa Hamakusu. She's a climate change officer at the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment of Zambia. She's committed climate change officer for adaptation, passionate about caring for the environment, with full knowledge of environmental and climate change regulation. She is also a great interest in carbon market and excellent ability to identify and manage climate change risks. She is also, I'm proud to say that she is also an alumna of one of our projects called Impulse Out, where she is currently going through an incubation phase of her solution. Her favorite quote, which I love so much, she said, "You have to solve problems with people and not for the people." The next panelist is Ms. Nanko Madu. She's joining us online. And she's a seasoned entrepreneur, ecosystem builder with 12 years of progressive experience in managing programs on ecosystem development and entrepreneurship on the African continent. She is also the director of programs at AfriLabs, a network organization supporting innovation centers across Africa, where she leads the design and implementation of the organization program targeted at strengthening capacity. She previously worked as a consultant with the World Bank. Next on the list is Dr. Mao Amit. He is the founder and executive director of Africa Center for Green Economy, a think tank based in South Africa. He has more than 15 years experience in green economy, in the green economy sector in Africa and globally. He is, as a researcher and thought leader. Dr. Ami was also an adjunct professor at the Graduate School of Business, the University of Cape Town, and currently serves as an external examiner at the said Business School, University of Oxford. Next on the list is Mr. William Otiano, is the UNFCCC regional lead for Eastern and Southern Africa. His career with the United Nations spanned more than 30 years in various regional and headquarter duty stations. Before being selected for the role of regional lead, he was the monitor, evaluation, and reporting officer. His expertise includes a wide knowledge of the climate agenda and policy processes, formulation and implementation of strategies and policy. Last but not the least is Ms. Erin Tessin. She is the director of IDRC, which is the International Development Research Center Sustainable Inclusive Economic Program. Erin joined IDRC in November 2020. She brings over 20 years of experience in international development and humanitarian sector within Canada, within Canadian and international non-governmental organization, the United Nations Agency, bilateral development program. Erin is also worked on various applied research projects. With that, I would like you all to welcome our distinguished panelists with a hand of applause. So, going now to the question, my first question goes to Dr. Ambe. You heard the presentation of Erick and setting already a kind of a platform bringing different stakeholders together. So having heard that, I just wish to know from you, how can we design, or are there other approaches to design innovation model for education or producing innovators to foster entrepreneurship to effectively deliver ambitious climate action?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Is it clear?
Is it
working now? Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah. Thanks everyone for the opportunity to sit on this panel and for the chance to share my thoughts around what I think is required to develop an interesting or more effective innovation system that could accelerate capacity development and entrepreneurship. I've got a couple of things. I think the most important thing, one, is that I think that our education system, so instead of thinking about new innovations, new ways of doing things, we actually have to make sure that our systems function very well. And I'm afraid that, oftentimes when I look at how the graduates that come out of our education systems, they are not well capacitated. So there is something that needs to be done at a higher education level to ensure that the quality of output is effective, is entrepreneurial in that sense. We normally, in my center, we take interns at a postgraduate level at master's degree, but you often find students come with absolutely no ability of how to write. And in this kind of sector, writing and communicating is extremely important. So I think that the education system, there is something that needs to be done there so that we can produce the right quality of graduates to go into the world. But also just to emphasize that, in terms of entrepreneurial activity, it does not really necessarily have to be only in the formal educational sector. Entrepreneurship happens on the streets, in the townships, and so on. And I find that oftentimes there's a lot of emphasis in terms of capacitating actors who are in the formal education system while forgetting actually what is happening in the rural areas, in the informal sector. So I think that's a really important issue to elaborate. And the third thing that I think is critical to touch on, and Erick already talked about it in his presentation, is how do we make the innovation ecosystem much more effective? A few years ago, we did a report for South Africa Water Research Commission looking, it was called, it's actually online, called South Africa Water Innovation Story. So for those of you who know South Africa has got a significant water crisis, but we have so many universities there, and we ask the question, why is it that this is a country that's well endowed in terms of innovation, in terms of capacity, yet we have a water crisis? So when we talk to innovators at university, we talk to researchers, we talk to investors and so on, we found that the innovation ecosystem is extremely broken. So you'll find funders who are interested in R&D, they will fund any research at the university level, but once a product has been developed and it is ready to go to the market, oftentimes there are no takers in the market. And that's because the R&D community, which is the research and development community, is not actually communicating with the investors. And then on the other hand, private equity companies come to us and say, like, we want to invest in the water sector. Where do we find those bankable projects for us to invest in? I'm like, don't talk to us. Go and talk to the Water Research Commission. Go and talk to the other actors who are also playing in this space so that you ensure that innovations can move smoothly from an R&D stage all the way to commercialization. I would like to end here just as opening remarks for this. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ambe. That was a very important opening statement from your side. I think one important statement that I took from your intervention was that our system needs to function better. And with this, I would like to invite Nanko from the bringing in the tech perspective on maybe you should start first to tell us what is AfriLab and how do you take up support youth and women innovation in implementing climate action. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure joining on this panel from faraway Abuja, Nigeria. So AfriLabs, just touch on AfriLabs. AfriLabs is a network of over 400 innovation and technology hubs across 52 African countries. What the HQ or the Secretariat does to the network of innovation hubs is that we provide them with capacity building to enable them to better, run their hubs, so operationalization of their hubs so that they are successful in their writers' hubs, but most importantly, to be able to, gain the knowledge to better support their own communities of startups, innovators, and entrepreneurs. We also provide data, like we carry out research studies to provide critical data for them to be able to carry out the right decisions, knowing what is happening on the ecosystem. We provide them with networking opportunities. So one of the things that we do is we carry out a lot of events. We run the biggest ecosystem event on the continent, the AfriLabs annual gathering, and it basically brings together all the key stakeholders that enable the ecosystem to thrive. And we come and discuss critical or key issues or key topics that is salient in the ecosystem at the time. We also foster collaborations, so we run programs that encourages hubs across different countries, across different, sectors to come together and collaborate. That fosters peer-to-peer learning, cross-country and cross-regional learnings and knowledge sharing. So that's what we do at AfriLabs. But to drill into the question on how, how the entrepreneurial ecosystem is, leveraging on sorry, I'm trying to get the question correctly so that I don't go off, like how the model, the multi-stakeholder model is being deployed to promote youth and women innovators and entrepreneurs on the continent. We do 4 things, or rather the way we say it is there are 4 key things. The first is to consult, and I think what Mao said in his conversation, touches on this, that there's a need to consult, okay, so that you're not deploying interventions or solutions that does not meet the needs that of your target. So we do a lot of consultation across the different stakeholder groups. So you're looking at the academia, if you look at, churning out, knowledgeable or entrepreneurs that have the capacity to deploy, or even in, as a way of tackling for the workforce of the entrepreneurs, there's a need, to consult with the academia to ensure that we're churning out the right talent. We then involve them. So there's a need for involvement of the different stakeholders, right? That beyond consulting with them, involve them in the process. So we sometimes call that co-designing, right? That you're designing an intervention, for youth, for women. You're talking to the youth as a critical stakeholder. You're talking to women. What is your what is the problem? What is the challenge you're facing? Why are women not getting, the funding that they need to get, the support that they need to get? What is the challenge from your perspective? You're talking to the hubs themselves that support these entrepreneurs to understand the challenges that they're facing and get their own perspective of how the solution should be. You're talking to, the policymakers, the national governments, and in our position, we also talk to the African Union, right? To say what are the regulations that need to be put in place? What policies need to be put in place, and how can we drive those policies to support youth and support women? We're talking to also the investors, right? Because it's important that as we're churning out, the innovations or startups that are deploying critical innovations on the continent, there's a need to also have them get them investable. So talking to the investor community to say, what are the challenges you have with investing in the continent? One of the 2 or 3 years ago, one of the biggest questions that was being asked in the ecosystem was, or one of the controversial statements or questions that we had was, one, the investors saying that we don't have investable startups, and the startups saying that, we cannot get investment. So AfriLabs over the years has really worked to bridge that gap to say, how can we churn out investable startups that the investors can invest in? I'm happy to say that last year on the continent, we got 4 billion in investment as a total. And that drives to show the need for involvement and consultation. And then there's a collaboration and then monitoring. Collaboration is them working together, pushing that ownership, right? So that different stakeholders are, owning, their own part of, the work that ensures that that the intervention moves forward. And then lastly is accountability and monitoring, like monitoring the interventions, ensuring that people are held accountable, the different stakeholders, you, the entrepreneur, you're held accountable to be successful by implementing, your own part of the of what needs to make you successful, the policy makers being held accountable to implementing the policies and ensuring that the policies have been put in place, the academia, churning out, talent that, are useful and all of that. So I'm going to pause there, for now.
Thank you very much, Nanko. That was very, very, very informative. So now the next panelist, Philippa, you've heard the previous 2 speakers talking about a platform bringing different stakeholders to build capacity related to innovations and entrepreneurship. As someone who have benefited for such a platform, can you please share your experience and also maybe share the experience that you are currently going through in the incubation phase of your solution?
Thank you, Emmanuel. So the experience in the incubation process has been very great. We have been equipped, with skills on identifying our markets for our solutions we're actually developing in the solutions lab. I've been privileged through the incubation process to also have been linked to potential funders for my project and continuation of my project. So the incubation process has actually been a great experience for me as a woman climate entrepreneur, who have been able to also be equipped with skills to be able to identify our problems and also fit our solutions with our problems. So, and I think that's actually what is needed for most women, as there is a lack of capacity building programs as such to actually advance solutions for women entrepreneurs. So my experience in the incubation process has been actually great, Emmanuel. And next month, we start our mentorship programs with our individual mentors to be able to grow our solutions, to be able to grow our projects, and just guide us on the way to develop proposals, and also just equip us with negotiation skills, to be able to pinch these presentations, to be able to get more investment. So it's been a great experience, and I hope there can be more such programs for other women climate entrepreneurs. Thank you, Doctor. So my project is looking at carbon market viability for small-scale producers in the agricultural and forestry sectors. And it's actually focused on the rural communities of the Katete district in the eastern province of Zambia. And I'm hoping at the end of the project, we can be able to establish a tangible carbon offset scheme for the rural people. As you know, small-scale producers are really not well catered for when it comes to voluntary carbon markets. The topic has been existing for a while, but they are not really well catered for. So I'm just hoping with my project, we can be able to include the small-scale producers, and get them to be able to sell off their carbon credits and actually benefit the lion's share than the existing modalities that are there now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Philippa. I was also about to ask you to talk a little bit about your project, but thank you, Mao, for bringing that, for hinting her on that. So the next question goes to William, who is the regional lead in the Regional Collaboration Center in Kampala. I know the regional centers, they have a huge responsibility to build capacity when it comes to climate action. I would like maybe just to ask you to share, to know if there are some initiatives that are already going on to strengthen capacity, to strengthen youth engagement in green innovation, and what is your experience so far?
Thank you, Emmanuel. Good morning, everybody. It really is a pleasure to be here, to be speaking together with these distinguished panelists on this very important subject that will support youth and women in Africa to be green entrepreneurs. Before I directly answer the question, what the last panelist just talked about towards the tail end of her submission, the carbon markets, and it also ties in with the question. Just last week on Friday, we had a collaboration, or we launched an Article 6 online training program, which really will speak to what you're asking about. After the session, I can give you the link to the training program, and it's not targeted just to the youth, but basically to everybody, because Article 6, after the Kyoto ended in 2020, there's been so many questions about what next, and what exactly is Article 6. So this training program, which is part of the wider capacity building program that the UNFCCC has been mandated to undertake to support developing countries in understanding Article 6, will allow you to be able to see how can the youth, or how can projects such as yours tap into that market. Okay? So back to your question, yes, the UNFCCC is very engaged in programs to support youth and women, to have them get mainstreamed into the UNFCCC process. Because of time, I'll not go into details, but I can name just 4 of such initiatives, which again is not necessarily just on green innovation, but in general, how are youth then being mainstreamed into the UNFCCC process? Of course, one of them is this collaboration that we have now with Erick, this particular program that we're going to work on to support youth and women green entrepreneurs. We also have an Academy for Global Youth Leadership Empowerment, which will help youth get capacity to be able to work on policies for green entrepreneurship. That should be launched sometime next year. And then we have an ongoing Youth for Capacity program, which is funded by the government of Italy and UNDP. And this is a mentorship program which gets to train youth and help them become policy experts on climate issues. And finally, we last year had the RCC Kampala made a bid to the Africa Climate Fund and got a bid of almost $500,000, which will be used to then train women across Africa to be negotiators, or to be able to understand better the UNFCCC process. Part of that training will ensure that a few of those who go through the training will actually be then supported as early as for the next subsidiary body sessions in June in Bonn, and also for COP28. So these are just some of the initiatives that I think when we look at what this project is about, the broader picture or the RCC's mandate to really try and make all this come together so that it can feed back into what the process is all about. Because all these green entrepreneurship projects or whatever the youth are doing to support the climate or towards climate action, how does that fit into the government promises? So that's where we come in, where we try and work with the different partners and groups to make sure that their efforts do not go to waste, that it is then consolidated and can really feed back into the UNFCCC process, and therefore help the countries and in general the bigger climate change fight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, William, for that insight. So, Erick, coming from a developmental agency, and also listening to the previous speaker talking about different stakeholders, I think it will be interesting also to hear from you who are the relevant actors from the perspective of your agency to set up conducive environment to support youth and women innovation in implementing some of these green solutions, and how do you cooperate or how do you build synergies with these different platforms?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. No, thanks very much, and it's lovely to be here. So IDRC, which is a part of the Canada's foreign affairs efforts, we're a sort of a standalone organization that supports research in the global south. We've been around for 51 or so years. Fantastic question, and thank you so much. I think, you know, we talk about inclusion, right? We talk about inclusion, and what does that mean? And gender equality and gender inclusion. And I'm sure the panelists will agree, although I haven't heard it, is one of the biggest barriers is social norms. Social norms are in the way of women and young people, entrepreneurs, to getting to their path of success. And if you just look, for instance, at two entrepreneurs, one man and one woman, they are not the same, and they have different challenges. They may each have 10 challenges, but the 10 challenges of the women are different from the 10 challenges of the men. And one of the big challenges that we have seen is on childcare and access to childcare. If you are an entrepreneur, you are on your feet, you are running around, you are going from meeting to meeting, and if you've got children or elderly people at home, that the social norms dictate that you are the one that has to take care of them, then you need a solution to that. And we're not talking about that enough. I was with a group of women entrepreneurs just a couple of weeks ago. That is one of their biggest problems. Another big problem, when women entrepreneurs are knocking on the doors of government and of potential investors, often they have to pretend, they have to have a man stand in for them to get their point across and be taken seriously. This is 2022, but this is still absolutely the reality on the ground for many women and young people. So we can ask our own selves individually here in this room, how can we contribute to changing social norms, to changing how we think about the roles of women and men? But you asked me about who are some of the key actors. Of course, this is a fantastic multidisciplinary project, which you've spoken a lot about with academia and private sector and public sector, et cetera. Absolutely necessary. One of the key actors, I think, are the impact investors, right? And we were just meeting with them a group of them last week to say, what knowledge are you missing to be able to invest more in green entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs? And one of the things that came out, a couple of the things. One is that women seem to be more risk averse in taking on debt, right? and that we can go down that path. We don't have time today, but that is one of the things that they are picking up. And then the other thing is that I've just lost my train of thought. Is that some have said that they need to have more data on the successfulness of gender equal or gender inclusive programming. They want the numbers, and we can provide those numbers, but it's like impact investors, they talk in numbers. They need that. They don't want to just say, oh, we're doing this because it feels good. No, they're doing it because it makes business sense to do it, right? And so we are working with them, and I'm sure this project as well is working with them. We need to keep the lines of communication open with them to, in a sense, I don't want to say educate, but to enlighten them of the true, potential of women and young people, especially on the African continent. They're the ones that are going to change the world. So let's break down those barriers so that they can have more access to finance and have it done in an inclusive way, not just pretend that a woman comes and all of a sudden she's no longer the primary caregiver at home. Let's be real. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for that insight. So we have completed the first round of questions, and I'm also looking at the time. We are running a little bit late. So please, in the next round of questions, just try to keep your response very short and below 2 minutes. And my next question will go to Philippa. 2 keywords I took from the talk of Erin is inclusion and social norm. As a youth and as a woman, what are some of the challenges that you are facing, or how can you be empowered to implement climate action, if you have some experience to share?
Thank you, Eric. So just as Erin stated, there's the existing gender bias when it comes to women, especially climate entrepreneurs, women climate entrepreneurs. The unsupportive social norms at household level, community, even in formal institutions. There's generally a bad attitude and behavior towards women in business. First of all, climate solutions and the importance of climate solutions are not taken seriously. Secondly, it will be a woman coming to say, I've got this climate solution, or I've got this business in climate as a climate solution. Nobody will take that seriously. So the unsupportive social norms are number one. And number two, there is also a lack of capacity building programs. I think I touched on that earlier when I was speaking about my experience in the incubation process, and Erin also touched on it. So there's really lack of capacity building programs focused on women. And that also presents a lack of mentorship. There's not enough success stories to actually have women feel confident and be encouraged to take on businesses in the climate space. We don't have too many success stories of the challenges, the opportunities, the growth that other women have actually experienced in this industry. As you know, it's already male-dominated, the clean techs, the renewable energy, all those are male-dominated industries. So we don't have enough success stories, we don't have enough mentorship, we don't have enough capacity building programs. There's also, the challenge with access to finance. Should you go at a bank, should you go at a lending institution, they'll need collateral, and that collateral is land, these large ticket items, and they'll be under a man's name. And that also poses already a serious challenge for you to get that credit, for you to start up. Other women will get an opportunity to be, in a capacity building program, but they'll be stuck at startup because, they don't have also the skills to just go out there and get more investment. So they're just stuck up. They're going from one one incubation program to another just to get some funding to continue their businesses, and they're stuck at the same level.
Thank you.
So we need more capacity building programs. And thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and that was very insightful. Nanko, we had bias from a tech hub perspective. What do main stakeholder need to create this conducive environment? And maybe if you have one or two concrete challenges that you can add to what Philippa have said, I think that would be great also. So what do main stakeholders need to create a conducive environment that is inclusive and break down these social norms?
I totally agree with the last two speakers. The problems that women are facing are the problems that the women are facing, and they really articulated that very well. Those are part of the notes that I had, based on studies that we've carried out as an organization. In 2019, we carried out a needs assessment report as we deployed into our AfriLabs capacity building program that targeted hubs and just building their capacities to better function, right? And the clear need that came out was that there needed to be, female-focused investor communities, okay, in order to provide dedicated funding opportunities to, support female-led businesses and innovations. Because, women are naturally, there's the gender bias, and women are naturally underserved based on tradition, cultural norms, and social norms, as mentioned. Women need to be incentivized, women entrepreneurs as incentivized, the capacity as the entrepreneurial scope needs to be built to build their confidence, by creating inclusive ecosystems, where women are fully supported to accessing business development and financing support for their ventures. In addition, giving low participation of female tailored approaches are usually better tools to respond to the needs of female operated businesses. So we look at delivering methods that are more effective for female entrepreneurs, such as the use of female coaches, leveraging on peer-to-peer learning for female participants where, well-experienced and women that have gone through the system and have succeeded, are paired with other women to, teach them, coach them, and support them and mentor them to be successful. But most importantly, at this point, one of the things that we drive for as an organization is just women's quota. So if you look at investments, how can women get, how can we become a culture of women quota where we deliberately drive investment and programs for women, so the relocation program sits well, where it is targeting women, is going to build the capacity of women and give them an enabling environment to succeed, because we know that if you try to go naturally, things will not be favorable to them. So it's just being specific and being targeted, supporting women to build the capacity to invest in their ventures and innovations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. In the interest of time, Mao, just quickly, what are some of the green sectors with high potentials for innovation and entrepreneurship in the continent of Africa?
Thank you very much. In really 3 seconds, I would like to say that when you think about green innovations, we need to think about it in the context that Africa is experiencing. That is the urgent need to create jobs, and I'm talking about mass jobs. And therefore, the opportunities that exist are really in sectors like agriculture, because agriculture is the backbone of this country. We need to accelerate that, make it much more smarter, much more productive. Waste is a big challenge. We have issues to do with renewable energy. 80% of this continent is not connected to renewable energy sources, so significant challenges around that. There's a whole lot of issues, but I think that for me, the key thing is, what are those sectors that create opportunities for us to lift millions of people out of poverty? And that's really the crux of how we can transition to a much more inclusive world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. William, I would like to bring you in here. You already mentioned about the online course on article, addressing some of the issues pointed out in Article 6. And I just wanted to ask you again, are there other opportunities besides this online course? And maybe you can also shed some light in terms of the policy gap in the continent when it comes to capacity building and addressing Article 6.
Thanks. Apart from the online training that I mentioned a while ago, which is open to everybody to register to, the Secretariat actually has a whole program that's going to take place in 2 phases. Part of what it will do is to address those policy gaps where we will have an ongoing dialogue with the different parties or governments to identify what those policy gaps are. And we shall have an expert based at the RCC Kampala, of course also colleagues from Bonn, will be readily available to provide that kind of information and support to them.
Okay, thank you very much. So last but not the least, in terms of the question and answer session, I would like to ask Erick, what are the dimensions and the challenges of inclusive economy from the perspective of a development cooperation actor like IDRC, and what are the mechanisms you provide or to address these challenges?
Thanks. So just in 1 minute. I think, well, I've spoken about inclusivity before. I won't repeat that. But, you know, the knowledge brokering between organizations that are working in this space needs to happen more. And I think development donor organizations need to be better at coordinating with each other as well. And so, like for instance, the Aspen Network for Development Entrepreneurs, which is a big network of 250 organizations all working in the entrepreneurship ecosystem, you know, they should be here, part of this, talking to you, and to make sure that what they're learning, they're sharing with you, and vice versa, so that we're all learning together. And keep it multidisciplinary and not be siloed just in climate change or just in gender or just in social inclusion. It's a multifaceted approach that will lead to success.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, with the interest of time, we will have to end the discussion here, but I would like to use this opportunity to thank once more our panelists, and maybe we can continue the discussion in the sideline of the event. So once more, thank you all for being here, and thank the panelists for this engaging discussion. So wish you all a nice day.